welcome everyone to a recording of an interview with Darker Things. You're here with us. You're here with us. Welcome everyone. Welcome Doug. Welcome welcome everyone on the panel. How we all doing tonight? How we all doing?
Doing fabulous, Zach. Doing fabulous. Thanks for that kind intro there. Roger, thanks for having me.
I'm glad that you're here. Now, before we get started, I'd like to say that we have Disney Magic Jack here.
That's me.
We have Old John, or the Wonderful World of Weirdness, whichever you want to call him. I like to call him Old John. It's kind of stuck to him now, so he's Old John. And also we have Darker Things, which is Doug, and Jen, which is his son. So with you guys, you want to say hi?
Hello. Good evening.
John, you still there?
Hello.
There he is. Okay. So now, with that being said, I'm going to hand this over to Darker Things, aka Doug.
I'm a quiet person.
Okay,
So, Darker Things, Doug, 52 years young. And if Jack in many trades, a master of probably maybe one, which was theater arts, performing. Did that since 4th grade. Was actually selected as one of 50 high school students to go to Ashland, Oregon Shakespeare Seminar, which is a regional theater in Ashland, Oregon. We pick high school juniors every year. I was one of 50 in the United States selected to go study professionally with somebody there. That was kind of cool. And that was kind of what I thought my direction my life was going to take. But, life happens. And mom got sick with some Alzheimer's and some dementia. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. I opted to take care of my mother. Met my son's mom while I was doing tech work, networking, computer networking, and never got back to doing community theater or professional theater or anything like that. I always still had that acting bug in me. Flash forward, my son's turning about 14, 15 years old, and he's been doing choir stuff, and he's liking live skits. There was a Good Mythical Morning on YouTube. He was vibing with those 2 individuals there, and he's like, "You know what, Dad? I'd like to try my hand at being a YouTuber, but I'm really shy." And I said, "You know what, son? I'll support you. I'll help you edit your videos, and if you need me, I'll just come on board with you. We can do this together." And so we started off with a gaming channel called Old Gen versus New Gen versus Worlds. And that is kind of where the first channel that we even did took off. I did branch out briefly while we were trying to, before we niched down into just video games. We were doing food fight type things, like which is better, French fries and onion rings, who reigns supreme and burgers type thing. And I even did like a different channel called Dad Meets World, kind of playing with the Boy Meets World, Dad Meets World type thing, which was kind of darker content in a way. And then my son kind of got burnt out. Wasn't really wanting to do the YouTube thing for a while. And I was still all about it. And so I decided to do Darker Things. And my son saw the content I was producing there. It's like, whoa, Dad, that's like different from anything we've done on the gaming channel. And it seems to hit differently. And I like it. I want you to keep doing that. Don't stop doing that. And we recently come back together, start doing the gaming content again, too. So I'm looking forward to always working with him. He's not just my son. He's my best friend. And I really enjoyed working with him. So I'm going to let him talk briefly about himself now.
Oh, hi. My name is Trace, also known as New Gen. I don't do a lot with Darker Things other than helping him with sometimes his thumbnails and script. I also come from a background of, like my dad said, choir, but I've also done a little bit of voice acting, and I'm trying to become an amateur mangaka. I draw anime, and I'm trying to make my own manga.
My comfortable spot is doing what I do on Darker Things, discussing, the serial killers, the cult leaders, disturbed minds, urban legends, things like that, just because I'm fascinated by all that. And I can go down a rabbit hole of research. And I think because of that, I find things that a lot of people miss sometimes. There's things that'll stick out to me and I'll share them. And I get to hear back that people are like, oh, I hadn't heard that before, or I hadn't heard that. And so that's encouraging. That tells me I'm doing something right. And then I just think I'm able to express myself through the thumbnails and the way I do the editing of the videos, the art style, stuff like that is a form of self-expression. It might be darker content, but that's what I find with that. And then, of course, the channel that we work with together, it is basically a video game channel, but we're gonna get back to doing what we originally conceived with that, and that is where he's going to be tasked with playing old school games, so old gen games, retro style games, and he's going to try to get me to come up to speed and play some of the newer games. And we're going to give each other challenges. So that's where we're going as far as the video game channel goes.
So, with the retro games, I'm still not very used to the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64 games. And I'm having to get used to the control schemes and the floatiness. One of the biggest problems I'm going to probably find is with modern games, they kind of hold your hand, where old games I'm going to have to read and pay attention to a lot more. I've been playing through Silent Hill 1 as of recent, and it's been a real fun experience. I'm currently getting familiar with an emulator called Zebra. The hardest part for me was figuring out how to format my drive. Yeah, I had to format a drive and get files for a BIOS. It was challenging at first. After I figured out what I needed to do and broke it down into sections, to smaller tasks, it became a little easier.
Probably wasn't easy for him either because, I'm a helicopter dad when it comes to tech, and I'm like, don't do anything that's going to wreck the machines.
And I had to tell him that the emulator sites that I go to find this stuff are all safe. The ones I use, I make sure I do my research because I don't want my hard drive or my computer to fail. These things are expensive.
So a lot of my challenges are my videos when they're finished usually look pretty polished, but to be honest, I'm a noob. I'm very new to video editing. I'm much more used to being in front of the camera on stage and just being the talent. Research is not the hard part. It's actually doing the editing. I'm not one who normally reaches out for help. So I found myself networking and reaching out for help, and that's going to help me a great deal, I think. But it's the sheer amount of time it takes me. It might take someone who's more experienced in editing sometimes, or let's say an hour long worth of content might take them, maybe 2 hours or 3 hours. And for me, sometimes to get 30 minutes of content, it probably took me maybe 24 hours, 30 hours, maybe 40 hours of editing in front of the computer because I'll make mistakes. And there's not always an undo. And I don't always have I'm learning now to have copies upon copies of my source files because sometimes when you're not able to undo, then, I've got to go through now, re-render something, which puts me back further. That's probably my biggest takeaway is to make sure I have duplicates upon duplicates, kind of like a RAID, so to speak, of my B-roll footage or whatever my source files are, so that if I do make a mistake that I'm not able to recover from, I don't lose so much time. Another challenge would be not every program I work with marries well with another. So if I'm using more than one program, like Adobe, all of their programs seem to work really well together, but sometimes I'll render a file, and if I don't make sure it's in a certain format and I try to move it over into another program I use called a script, because we don't recognize that file format. Well, it's not as simple as changing the extension at the end and then expecting it to import over. I have to go through, re-render it into that format that the script's going to recognize, and I'll be able to use it.
I do have a couple of questions in regards to editing and things like that. Obviously, like your like your Darker Things channel. I've been watching that like since you started. That I really like. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I love watching like crime documentaries. I love all that kind of stuff. A couple of questions for me in terms of editing. Obviously, I know you use something called Descript. I've seen that through. You sent me being a creative consultant on your recent video, which I appreciate. I've never seen that program before. How does that work?
So the script is really more, I would say, the script is to video editing what Windows was to DOS. It's more plug and play. What you see is what you get. So it's more intuitive also. Now, at risk of offending some people, I think Apple, in many ways, when it first came out with its phone, its platforms, its apps and everything's phone was much more intuitive than the Android. You had to be kind of tech savvy to use the Android, not so tech savvy to use the Apple. Things were just kind of intuitive. You could figure it out.
Yeah.
That's really kind of, the script is kind of simplifying the process.
Okay.
And you can see everything on your timeline. You're not having to do like edit this, edit that, like all these little tiny edits and layers and stuff. There's still layers involved, but it just kind of uncomplicates things.
Oh, okay. Cool.
One of the features I find that helps me in Descript, it's kind of a cheat, in that it is kind of AI, but it's not, I think, in the realm of overuse of AI. I'm good at memorizing things, but at the same time, if I'm writing something, researching something, and trying to get something to produce fast, the way I'm kind of overcoming one of the hurdles is I don't have to memorize right now so much. I can read what looks like a teleprompter, and like, for instance, if I'm off, my eyes are not tracking 100%. There's something indescribable which make it look like my eyes are never losing contact with the screen. It's fascinating. It's amazing.
That's so cool.
I love it.
Oh my gosh,
so
I need that.
If you've already seen my videos, you can't tell that I've looked away.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. I love that. That's so cool.
And it's one of the little features called eye contact. You just apply it to the section of video you want, and it does it for you.
Nice. So I use DaVinci Resolve. I use that to edit. And like you say, that's to be fair, that is I had to teach myself. I started with something very, very simple, called Shotcut, I think it was called, like way back when I started. And I was like, right, I researched, like, it wasn't challenging me enough. It was very, very simple editing. It wouldn't let me do as much as I wanted to do. I was like, right, I need something to push myself, to push the editing, I want layers on layers on layers of like videos. If you see in the video where there's like 3 of me here on this sofa, that's 3 separate videos, like shrunk together to make it look like I'm having a conversation with myself. It was insanely cool, but that video took me like a week to edit. I couldn't have done that on like the Shotcut like editing server or whatever it was. So I looked at DaVinci, and it's essentially just a free version of Adobe Premiere or like Final Cut, and it's that same level of like quality that a lot of I did a bit of research on it before I did it. A lot of like movie producers use that, and editors that work on like TV shows and movies and things like use DaVinci, and I can see why, because it's so powerful. Like it's a great tool. But yeah, like I said at the beginning of this stream, like I hated editing to begin with. I just couldn't be bothered with it. But I've learned to love it. There is another thing, the way that you do your artwork on like your B-roll and things like that. Is that an overlay? Is it an art? Because it looks like it's been drawn. It's very cool.
So, it's a process. I use Photoshop to my advantage.
Okay.
With that. Yeah, but I also use After Effects. So it's a combination using After Effects. You apply an overlay on After Effects on the video, and then you import it as a video into a clip into Photoshop. And then I'm able to go through a process of really kind of converting the entire video into what's a smart object, so that the entire video, that little clip of whatever it is I'm using gets impacted by whatever change I'm making. That was actually one of my challenges at first, because before I discovered that I had to convert it to a smart object, I was having to go frame by frame to apply the effect.
No.